Hello everybody! In this video we will create an intuitive selfie. So we don't take a photo, but we use colored pencils. So wherever you store your colored pencils, pick them up and let's create an intuitive selfie. All you need is really colored pencils and maybe an eraser. My pencils are in these kind of shallow boxes. So I have them organized by color. You can use any colors when you start this project. The first idea is to create kind of surface. You may actually think that you may want to start coloring the face right away, but I actually recommend that you don't think like that you only start by connecting yourself with the paper. Or I often think that the pencils need to connect with the paper, so that the paper and the pencils form a connection. The idea is, of course, that the connection is not only the pencil and paper, but also your hand and pencil, and then your hand and your heart. So your thoughts and heart, the feelings, the emotions, everything you have are connected. And I think that this connection phase, this takes some time. Often when I start coloring, I start with one color that calls me the most. And to be honest, quite often in the beginning, there's no color that calls me, really. So I picked my least worst color. It's the one that irritates me the least, or the one that looks a bit pathetic and I want to take that to play. I try to think about my pencils as persons. So if there's a long pencil, I've noticed it can be as sad as a short pencil. A short pencil may be sad because its life is coming to an end. But a long pencil may be sad because you've been saving for it for so long time. It hasn't had the opportunity to play. So I try to pick the pencil sometimes because of the empathy that I feel for it. So this is just to say that you can pick any color to start. And when you start coloring with one color, it does get a bit boring. So you need to change the color then. Color some, then change to another pencil. Slowly you start to realize that you are actually becoming quite inspired and that you actually know quite more certain what color to pick next. And now the idea is not to think about this selfie stuff at all. This is just a setup. You can't believe how long time it took me to make this setup. This setup where I'm talking to you. I had to think about what would be the painting that would look lovely on the background. Which one of my paintings would I pick? Are there any flowers in my household that bloom right now? Like this orchid came selected. To set all the lights, all the settings in the camera, to pick my pencils again after the coloring session. It took quite a long time to put all the lights on and things like that. So that's actually the phase you are in when you're coloring the blank paper first. I suggest that you leave some blank in the middle, because then you have much more playroom with the facial features. It's like when you setting up this kind of setting for a selfie or for a video, when you do all the things that you put in the background, you have to take into account that there will be a face in the middle. So that's the kind of setting you want. You want to have some blank area in the middle, and then you want to have colors around the face. Once you have colored for some time, then you might feel that your presence is much stronger. I love that feeling. I love that feeling when everything comes together, and I think that's why we color. Not only freely, like in this video. I have to confess something. Recently, I've been making a new painting course. It's about watercolor painting and about flowers and plants, and I love flowers and plants. And coloring this kind of selfie is not something I do every day, but I do draw or paint plants almost every day. I've been painting a new series of oil paintings, then I've been working with this new watercolor class. It's been painting. It makes me really miss pens and pencils. It feels like the brush can never replace the pens and pencils. And on the other hand, it's the other way too. You can't never feel so free with the pens and pencils. But on the other hand, pens and pencils are like thinking. When I paint, it's like emotion all over. But I also need this kind of thinking. So after a painting day, I've been thinking, what now? And I've given myself the permission to do it. So what? To pick my coloring book and color some pretty drawings. Drawn by my friend Eeva Nikunin. So this is not any coloring book. I bought this because my friend has made it. It's published by Coloring Heaven. And I've colored a few pages here and there now and then. But now I got really hooked on coloring. I show a few pieces that I've colored. Some have been colored with colored pencils, but then I realized that I have old felt tip pens that I need to use, that dry if I don't use them. So I started coloring with felt tip pens. It's much harsher, the mark. And then I've colored some on the top of the markers too, with colored pencils. That's quite a nice combination. But you know, this is a different process, this when you color a coloring page. There's this sharp drawing, and then you add strong vivid colors, and then you add the shading. But when you're coloring intuitively, it's the other way around. You start with softness. You omit the outlines, you forget the outlines. My word for this year is release. I've been thinking about this word a lot. It changes every morning. Every morning when I take my dogs for a walk, I think about this word, release. What does it mean? There can be mornings when I think about that it's just pathetic words, that I'm so free, I'm expressing myself so freely. Why did I pick that word when it has nothing to teach? And then other mornings I think about release and I feel fear. I feel fear that I lose everything. If I let go, I lose everything that I've achieved. And I kind of like those mornings more. When I feel the fear, when I really dig deep into that word, release. You know, when coloring the coloring books. It's easy because you don't have to let go of anything. The drawing is already there, and then it's just some colors and maybe some shading if you want to. So there's not this fearful release process. The release happens much more subtle. The way it happens is much more subtle, merciful, and not so full of freedom. But then when you take the blank page and start coloring, the fear is there. Now when you color, all the things, all the beauty that you have colored, for example, on coloring pages, can be gone in a minute. And it's all caused by you. It's the same thing for every artist. When I start a big blank canvas, the same fear comes there. You can mess it all up. You can put the color on the wrong place, and then, okay, you can paint over, you can try to color over, but it's never the same. It's kind of the feeling that we have to learn to find enjoyment of. Because then we are much closer to ourselves as humans than when we don't think about those thoughts. This morning when I took the dogs for a walk and I felt that fear of releasing, then the next idea came that I want to make you a video where I color a selfie. Because I don't think anything else grounds you as much as selfies do. That's why we take them. We want to see how we are feeling. But you know, the selfie, when we take it with the phone camera, or any camera, that's just an outside view. And when you color an intuitive selfie with your colored pencils or with any art supplies, it's a selfie of your inner view. The camera is inside you. And okay, you may not have the best camera in the world. Let's acknowledge that. That's one of the fear factors, that your technical skills and your drawing skills are not quite there. But it's really sad if we don't use that camera. You know, when I talked about these long pencils that are sad when they haven't ever been used or used so little, isn't that the same thing when we don't create freely, when we don't release anything, when we don't put our inner camera on? It's a sad camera because it doesn't get used. I believe so much in this. I believe that we all need the use of this camera, that we can just start coloring freely, start coloring intuitively, and then we can slowly take the process so that we slowly know more about what the picture is about. And sometimes pictures are blurry, you know, it's always the risk. Even here, when I've checked the setting for a long time, there has been many times when I've recorded something and then I've realized, oh no, the camera hasn't sharpened it. So the same thing is when you color. Your camera may be a bit blurry, but actually the best pictures when you color from inside, they are always a bit blurry first. I would like you to explore this blurriness, this vagueness that is in the mixed emotions and mixed feelings that we all have. We are never fully focused, I think. That we have things coming and going, and the camera tries to catch that, and it's always a bit blurry. If you've ever been to an art museum and looked at those old portraits, world's slowest selfies, where a painter has painted a portrait for a long, long time. If you look at the outlines of the face, of each masterpiece, the outlines are never fully sharp. If you outline everything so sharply, it isn't realistic anymore. So it isn't real if you try to catch a certain feeling, a certain pretty face, a certain look. It isn't realistic anymore. So remember this blurriness. Remember to enjoy this blurriness. Because in art and in reality, the freedom happens in this area of blurriness. And that's why when on those mornings that I feel that the word release is just a stupid word, that's when my thoughts are too sharp. There's no freedom, no blurriness around it, around my vision. When I have this blurriness, this area of fear, there's so much potential. There's so much possibility to see things a bit differently. I think we all should love that blurriness. And that's one reason that I always want to play with my colored pencils in one way or another. I think that if you color mostly coloring books even, this idea of blurriness affects your coloring. Those sharp outlines, they don't have to limit you. Your color can go over. When you express a person sleeping, isn't it so that the person becomes the part of the surroundings when she sleeps? So the idea of a sharp face, of having a skin tone is different. The idea is different then. And the same thing is that when there's darkness, there's this subtle variation of value, color value, lightness or darkness. All is blue. Yeah, blurry is allowed. I've been thinking about this age that we are living in and how we overvalue the sharpness. We look a lot of photos where everything is really sharp and where sharpness is kind of the measure of quality. This is something that hinders people from creating, I think. That you start outlining and you start to find long lines that define everything. Then you get disappointed because you feel that your expression is so stiff. I try to keep my lines shorter and I try to keep the image blurrier. And that's when I can practice my word. For this year, that is release. If a face starts to appear, you may have this kind of thought that, oh no, it doesn't look like me, it doesn't look like me. But slow down, take a step back. When you take selfies, how often it looks like you? Not so very often, not so very often. So it's the same thing here. And then what I like to think is that we have alter egos. We have all kinds of personalities and all kinds of things we think about that can be seen as a person. So I wouldn't be so worried. And if you want to create somebody that doesn't look like you at all, it's surprisingly difficult. We often pick our familiar facial features when we create a portrait. I have seen this in practice. I was in a group where we painted a copy of an old masterpiece, which was an old portrait. And everybody's faces were a bit different, even if we all had the same model image. They all had familiar features so that, you know, they looked a bit like each one. So it's kind of subconscious that we bring those features in. Of course, we can, you know, like in real selfies, we can prep up a bit, we can, you know, use makeup, lighting, things like that. And so, for example, here, the face can be a little bit more narrow, maybe. Yeah, maybe the lips can be a little bit more full and a little bit more red and things like that. We can play when we are near the finish. I think that's one of the fun part of this. I like to add some abstract stuff. I like to think about that I'm listening to something, maybe music. When I'm there, there are sounds, there are thoughts in my inner space. I want to put some colors and some abstract shapes there too. What I like to do is exactly what I do in this selfie portrait, is that I like to sharpen something else than the surroundings of the face. So I like to sharpen, for example, a few strands of hair. When you sharpen something, the image looks sharper. So it doesn't have to be so that everything is sharp. You can just add few lines and the image is sharp. You can actually color a blurry selfie, just an abstract color play, and then add some sharp lines and you have a sharp image. And it doesn't have to be selfie. It can look like a landscape or just an abstract composition. Few sharp lines sharpen the image. And then about symmetry. One thing that many struggles is with symmetry. Yes, symmetrical faces are prettier than non-symmetrical. Yes, that's what we've been taught at least. But when I create a selfie, I know that my face is not symmetrical, and I actually like the asymmetry, the tension of asymmetry. And I do this. I put the face upside down and focus on the abstract composition only, not so much on how similar I can get the both sides. If there's something bigger here, there have to be something heavier here, and vice versa. So the asymmetrical faces are interesting, and the tension between the different sides of the drawing is always inspiring and expressive. So, things that you may have struggled with are actually the way to explore the freedom, the blurriness, the asymmetry, all these things that you've been struggling. The skin color. The skin doesn't have to be only one color. Skin can reflect its surroundings. And if we think about our inner world, it's full of color, isn't it? So, no beige faces or brown faces or whatever your skin color is, just let the color shine there. I wanted to talk freely because, yeah, even if my English is not perfect, I know that, and even if everything here is not perfect, I think it's still something people seek for in art, that we don't seek for perfection, we seek for expression. And I try to practice my word with this connection to expression. I hope this video inspires you to color freely and create freely. And when you're ready to become even freer, welcome to my courses.